our intervention requires an understanding of the local culture, history. It made people draw a connection between their food choices and the sacrifice of animals' lives. Hi everyone, thank you so much for the introduction. I didn't know that you would gonna read all the full name of my master, but thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Aim. I am the Program and Communication Assistant at Animal Alliance Asia. And I just want to give you overview a bit what is Animal Alliance Asia, or AAA. AAA is a non-profit organization with a mission to mobilize a community of local animal justice and vegan advocates across Asia to create waves of impactful actions for a better world for farmed animals. And today, we're going to explore what's going on in Asia by taking a look at grassroots initiatives in Asian animal justice advocacy. This presentation is mainly for those who are less familiar with the animal justice movement in Asia, but also for those who are curious to learn more. And before starting the presentation, I just want to see roughly where people in this room are from. Can you show of hand if you are from Europe? Wow, so many. And I just want to give a shout out to Obrigado Crisa people. They are farmed animal sanctuary in Portugal, and I volunteer with them. I learned a lot from them, and they are like a bunch of dedicated, inspiring activists that help animals in Portugal. So can we have a round of applause for them? Okay, show of hands if you are from North America. Okay, oh, only two? And Marine too, okay. And South America? Oh, nice, nice. Africa? Anyone from Africa at all? Okay, from Asia? 1, 2. Okay, we see a couple of hands out there. And Australia and Oceania, it's pretty far away. Okay, I don't see it. Oh, 1, 2, 1, okay, cool. I just want to point out how amazing it is that everyone traveling from all around the world to be here today, and we all have the same goal, which is to create a kinder and more just world for non-human animals. And I think it reflects really well today in this conference room. I'd like to take a brief moment to define the word Asia that I will be using in my presentation. Of course, Asia is the biggest continent with an enormous cultural diversity. So, while the statistics that I'll be showing you in the next slides are from all over Asia, the grassroots initiatives that I will be presenting today are from East Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, where I am from. Now let's begin. I'd like to walk you through the 3 parts of today's presentation. We will start with an overview of the current situation of farmed animals in Asia. And in part 2, we will dive a little deeper to explore the context of the movement. And hopefully this will help everyone understand the landscape and the unique situation of Asian context. Then in the last part, we will move on to the main highlight of this presentation, where we will get to know the actual examples of grassroots work carried out by local advocates in the past months. Now let's start with the overview. Did you know that in 2022, 47% of animals slaughtered globally were in Asia? Asia also produced 45% of milk in the world and 65% of eggs and 71% of fish and sea animals for consumption. These numbers show just exactly how big the scale of the problem is for the farm animals in our continent when compared to the rest of the world. However, although Asia is home to more than 75% of farmed animals, only 8% of funding generated for the animal advocacy movement is channeled into this region. But of course, the insufficient financial resources is not the only problem here. Given that the scale of the issue in Asia is immense with unimaginable numbers of animals' lives at stake, it's vital for us to understand how we can mobilize the movement in Asia going forward so that we can help a larger share of the world's animals. But to be able to do that, first, we need to understand barriers to growing the movement that the advocates in Asia are facing. So in this part, we will listen to the voices of local advocates to discuss context of the animal justice movement in Asia and how it might be more complex than you might think. And we can take a look at this report. Back in 2022, AAA's country coordinators, who are local advocates in different Asian countries, organized local gatherings in the form of focus groups and interviews, or as we call them, forums. More than 200 participants from 10 Asian countries came together to exchange their experiences about advocacy. The findings were then compiled and written into this report, and it's available on AA's website, but it's like almost 80 pages. So today I will summarize some of the main findings and share with you in the next slides. This is what we found common to many Asian countries. First of all, veganism is still commonly misunderstood, only viewed as a malnutritious diet and widely seen as a radical elitist Western import. Throughout Asia, there are still very few organizations focused specifically on farmed animal advocacy. The majority of advocates have little to no formal or informal training related to their particular advocacy. And there's a lack of specific local information to inform their work. Most of the information is only available in English, and oftentimes is not relevant to the context they're working in. And animal justice is not prioritized because of other pressing social justice and human rights issues. Our movement doesn't exist in a vacuum. Our advocacy is surrounded and affected by cultural, political, and legal challenges. Several countries have been facing political turmoil and corruption, making it almost impossible for the people to be heard by their government. Local laws can restrict activism, creating more barriers to action for animal advocates. There are few, if any, pro-animal lobbyists in each country, which also means slow changes on the legislative level, and governments can implement projects that are actively harmful to animals. And speciesism and animal sacrifice are embedded in many religious and cultural practices. Now that you learn more about the context of the movement in Asia, you might be able to see why some campaigns or interventions that work well in the West might not work as well in this region. Because what's effective in one place might not work in other places. Our intervention requires an understanding of the local culture, history, and other factors shaping people behaviors and perceptions, as well as social, economic, and political advantages and barriers for change. So, in the face of these complex issues, Who do you think are the people with a high level of local knowledge? Of course, local advocates. No worries. These conclusions, based on the voices and reality on the ground, are why AAA envisions the animal justice movement in Asia to be effective and culturally relevant, inclusive and equitable, and led by strong local leadership. With this vision and the knowledge about the roadblocks in the Asian movement, AAA is carrying out different programs to address those gaps. One of them is a re-granting program named Reroute Asia Fund, intending to provide financial support and mentorship in local languages to Asian advocates in 7 countries. The aim of this program is to make the funding process more accessible for grassroots initiatives. Another one is fellowship programs, planned and led by local advocates in 7 Asian countries as well. So, the examples of local Asian initiatives that I'm going to present today are part of these 2 programs, both because I'm more familiar with them and also because I believe they are great examples of grassroots advocacy. So now we arrived to the main highlight of today's presentation. And let's get to know 7 actual examples of Asian local initiatives carried out on the ground in the past month. Let's start by taking a look at 3 local projects funded by the Reroute Asia Fund. AA has managed to fund 12 different projects in total out of 89 applicants. The selected projects are very diverse, ranging from book publication, street activism, farmed animal sanctuary, documentary production, and so on. But today I selected 3 initiatives that have already concluded, and they are based in India, Taiwan, and South Korea. The first project is from Action for Community Transformation India Foundation Trust, or Active Trust, a local organization founded in 1995. They carried out their initiative last year in a small village named Kanapati, located in Tamil Nadu, southern of India. The program, Young Rural Girls as Vegan Ambassadors in India, empowered more than 50 schoolgirls by serving up them with healthy vegan meals and teaching them all about veganism and plant-based nutrition. The vegan ambassadors also got hands-on in animal welfare in their community. They went door to door, running a census on domestic animals in their village, and found more than 700 animals ranging from cows, chickens, ducks, dogs, and cats. They also took these visits as an opportunity to educate the families on how to take care of these animals, to provide them with better welfare, and also shared with them affordable recipes and benefits of plant-based diets. The result was reported to be very successful. The family visit was very popular among the children, and it was a great opportunity for them to learn how to work as a team. And thanks to the healthy vegan snacks and the education programs, advocates noted how the children were very happy with the change and paid more attention to their health and were eager to learn new things about veganism. Now let's jump from India to Taiwan to meet Herbie Bobo Creative Studio, a Taiwanese art studio. The artists at Herbie Bobo organized a spooky street outreach called 2023 Halloween Animal Funeral, which took place in Taipei and Tainan. With a Halloween parade, the volunteers marched through the streets wearing black clothes and animal masks while carrying memorial photos of dead animals. The highlight was when they stopped walking and handed out toy guns made from fake banknotes. They asked the passerby to choose. If you choose to eat animals, then you'd have to point the gun at the volunteers who represented farm animals. This activity was named Order. It made people draw a connection between their food choices and the sacrifice of animals' lives. In the end, the Herbie Bubble team reported that the event was a huge success. They managed to spread their message for farmed animals far and wide. They used art and creativity as a powerful tool in drawing people's attention and raising awareness for farmed animals. Last but not least, we will travel from Taiwan to South Korea and have a look at a project from Haru Lev. He has recently published his book titled Social Adjustment Refusal Manifesto: How to Live in the Age of Massacre. So, since Haru is also here with us today, I'd like to invite him to join me on the stage and tell us more about his book.
Yeah, so it's basically 6 years of travel journal about my personal experience of being at such places like foreigner detention center, homeless shelter, and the experience of dealing with sexual violence and witnessing like refugee camp, factory farms, and slaughterhouses. So it's like a guided trip for the readers to deeply understand how these all forms of violence and discrimination actually works and how all of them are interconnected. And it's also about the recognition of our own privilege and how to use it in the liberation movement. So this book was published a year ago in South Korea, and first 2,000 copy was sold in 2 months. I really hope to publish it abroad too. So if you have any resource or connection about publisher or translation, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Haru. So, his recent project was his book concert tour across 38 locations in South Korea. And this wasn't just a typical book tour, because it was a mix of powerful literature and soul-stirring music, all designed to spread the raw truth about animal exploitation and inspire real change. The response from his book concert tour was very impressive. Many people who were drawn to his book showed up initially thinking that it was just another traveling book, but because of the power of his writing and music, they felt how animal liberation connected to their own liberation. And good news, Haru will also be showing his film Planet A later at this conference. I already have a chance to watch part of it, and it was so beautiful and very moving, so I highly encourage everyone to attend his screening, and it will be on Saturday evening. So please check it out. Okay. From amazing local initiatives funded by the Regranting Program, we will be moving on to our fellowship programs in 7 countries, aiming to create waves of impact for the movement. They are designed and carried out by local advocates who are country coordinators at AAA and are deeply in touch with on-the-ground contacts and strong networks of local communities. This year, 6 countries are working on diet change on individual and institutional levels, and 1 country is working on animal welfare policy. With the limited time that I have today, I will go over 4 examples of the fellowship programs from 4 countries. Let's start with Pakistan. The project named Vegan Friendly Pakistan is taking place in Karachi and Lahore. The problem in the Pakistani movement is a lack of both vegans and advocates. So this fellowship was created to raise awareness, educate individuals, and engage with non-vegan audiences to introduce them to a plant-based diet and encourage their transitions. The program is planned and led by the Pakistan coordinator, Elia. It is run by a team of 6 fellows and many other volunteers who are divided into 2 groups. The first group focused on outreach and events to raise awareness, like workshops, community engagement, film screenings, and the first ever Veg Fest Mela in Pakistan called Veg Fest Mela, which took place on the 8th June in Karachi. Veg Fest Mela was a groundbreaking event in Pakistan. More than 200 people attended at the event and enjoyed a wide range of programs ranging from panel discussion, music, performance, and local plant-based food. It was created to empower the local communities, but at the same time, it also received so much love and support from the local communities as well. The aim of the second group will be focusing on community engagement to keep the momentum going, and you're welcome to follow their social media to see what they will be doing next. Now let's move on to another project from the Philippines. Steph, the Philippine coordinator, identified the lack of affordable and accessible plant-based food to be one of the bottlenecks to growing veganism in the country. People are aware of the issue, but they cannot practice veganism sustainably. Vegan food businesses have been closing or struggling, and at the same time, there's also a lack of support for local farmers. To address these issues, the program aims to make plant-based options more accessible to rural areas of the country. The team trained vegan business owners and plant-based chefs to become the mentors for local eateries to include their plant-based options in their menus. And while the program helps establish strong relationships with local farmers, they can also help farmers in buying locally sourced vegetables to be used in cooking with special discounts. Through this program, local vegan eateries and farmers could support each other and create a more sustainable and cooperative system. Ultimately, the team hoped that this will increase the availability of plant-based food and make it more accessible for a bigger group of people. Now, from the plant-based campaign engaging with local communities of Pakistan and the Philippines, we will now shift to a diet change intervention in Japan, where a crucial first step is being taken to reform school lunch programs, starting with implementing the policy that gives students the choice to opt out of animal-based milk. Yuki, our Japan coordinator, found 2 issues in the movement in his country. The first one is animal consumption is normalized and encouraged through school lunch programs, often giving students no choice to decide what they want to eat. It is part of the national policy to push milk consumption, which is a legacy of the post-war US intervention. The second one is not many advocates are working on a policy change because they think it requires higher level skills than other approaches like street outreach, for example. the fellowship in Japan tackles these two issues simultaneously. With the goal to reform school lunch across Japan on a municipal policy level, the program aims to take the first step by making milk drinking become optional for the students and not an obligation like it is today. This may be a small step, but it will give students an opportunity to question the food they take for granted and should be the first step towards better school lunches. So what Yuki has been doing is creating a team of fellows from around Japan offering online workshops that will help them work with local governments and schools in their own areas to pass the new policy to make milk optional and also to implement plant-based days at schools. Sticking with a policy change approach, now we'll move on to an animal welfare policy change campaign in Nepal. Surajan, our Nepal coordinator, identified a gap in addressing the inhumane conditions of buffalo transportation in Nepal. The issue was widely neglected, given that there is no animal welfare law for buffaloes in Nepal. Because the national law might be difficult to change, Surajan and his team saw that they needed to focus on a more promising approach instead, which is a policy change at the local government levels. They strategically focus on few key municipalities where hundreds of animal-loaded vehicles pass through. They started by setting up a team of advocates. Then they organized and provided the training that was important for the team in order for their actions to be impactful, like effective communication, policy drafting, and so on. And only after a few months of planning, recruiting the whole process, I'm very happy to share with you that they have already managed to get a new welfare policy passed in Ratananagar municipality. This is a major win for the animals, given that this new policy will affect more than 700 buffaloes who are transported each month in inhumane conditions through this location. With this new policy, they will be able to monitor farmed animals' transportations, and not just buffaloes, and also enforce a higher welfare standard during the transportation as well. Surajan said that this is probably the first ever policy to exist in the local government of Nepal regarding animal welfare issues during transportation. He's really determined to create more change in other cities and monitor the policy, monitor the enforcement of the policy no matter how long it takes. Of course, there are many more local initiatives throughout the entire continent that unfortunately we don't have enough time to cover all of them. For example, there's 3 other fellowship programs in Indonesia, Taiwan, and Vietnam that have started this year. And of course, there are many other countless projects and advocates in Asia beyond those that are associated with these programs that I presented today. And I couldn't end this presentation without emphasizing again how local advocates, such as those that I mentioned today, are in the best position to understand the complexity and the context of the problem that they are working with. It would be very difficult for someone outside of a community to establish trust and relationship the same way Steph is doing with vegan eateries and local farmers in the Philippines, or to identify the most effective approach to policy change and understand the key locations to focus on, like Surajan does for buffalo transportation in Nepal, or to empower and bring together a group of inspiring individuals like what Elia did at VegFest Mela in Pakistan. And more importantly, it would be impossible for a change to sustain itself without the strength and the power of local communities. I hope this presentation was informative for you, and most of all, that you leave today curious and excited to see what's going on in our region, what our local advocates in Asia has been doing. And I just want to say that I feel so honored to be here today to amplify the voices of Asian advocates, as well as our passion and our action to create a kinder world for non-human animals. And despite all the challenges that I presented to you, we are not giving up because Asia is our home, and we are determined to help and support each other and continue the work here no matter how long it takes. Thank you so much for your presentation, for your attention. And you can visit AA's website to learn more about local initiatives in Asia. Thank you. Feel free to reach out to us, and we will be happy to answer any questions you have.
We've got time for a couple questions. If people could keep them brief, then we can fit more in. I'll go 1, 2, and then 3.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation and emphasizing how important it is that we work together. I've done a lot of vegan activism outside of Europe, in Nepal, in Africa, also in Latin America, always with local activists, so it was nice to see some familiar faces there. But you mentioned in the beginning that, oftentimes, veganism is seen as this Western import, which is a very disingenuous argument, because the fact that the whole world is consuming this, large abundance of animal products is in fact the colonial remnant. So I would just, ask you, because, how can we get rid of this stigma? And what I usually do is when people say, this is westernization, I'm always trying to turn it around and say, no, the West is Easternizing, because the East was predominantly plant-based, and for the most part, Asia is even lactose intolerant, besides India and Nepal. So, are there some advices to how we can get away with this stigma that it's a Western thing?
Thank you so much for your answer. But first, thank you for your question. But before I answer, I'd like to invite my colleague, Ellie Nakajima. She's the director and co-founder of AAA, and maybe she have more insightful answers and information to share with you all today. So thank you. So your question is how we can challenge that stereotypes or misunderstanding about veganism being Western, right? I think it's very complex, and there are many ways to go about it. But like what my presentation said today, I think the message and the intention would be very well perceived and received if it comes from fellow local activists or advocates, because they are the people who understand the culture and also the conditions of that given countries. And I think it will also impose less resistance as well. I'm not sure if Ellie want to share anything?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question and the concern as well. So this is definitely one of the biggest problems that we have faced. But then over time, basically, as Aim said, the important thing to do is community engagement and community building, and they have the answer to all these things. So, for example, in China and Hong Kong, like we know that there are local efforts to actually invent a new word instead of the English term veganism, because, well, it's English, it already evokes some resistance to new terminology from the West. So there are interesting initiatives like that are happening on the ground. And then again, it actually, in some Asian countries, the concept of veganism is misunderstood as religious practice as well. So there are lots of cultural contexts that we have to undo. And for that, we really need local people who speak the language, who know the culture, to work with us to do that.
Anything else? Yes.
Hi, thanks for the talk. It was really good. And I've also spent some time in Asia and done some activism in India, Nepal, and a little bit in Thailand. And what you were saying about the cultural differences and knowing those, sometimes learn that lesson the hard way, but that's a story for another time, but totally agree with everything you said. What I wanted to ask was, you said at the beginning one of your major problems was funding, that you don't get enough funding. I can't help with that. I'm not rich. I would if I could. But, and then the other problems you mentioned, as like, I suppose, secondary and tertiary problems with that, like skills-related issues and not enough training and not enough people as well. So with the West having a lot of all of that, like we've got a lot of activists, a lot of advocates, and a lot of skills as well, how best can we help? Because obviously we can't help with the cultural barriers that you've mentioned. You need locals for that, but what can we do then?
Thank you so much for the question. It's really interesting, and I'm so happy that someone asked these questions today. First of all, I think it's very important to give the space and the space in the movement and the voice to advocates in Asia who doing the work on the ground. And I think it could, my answers might not be this, like the absolute solution, but what I can think of is to be a nice ally, supporting each other, maybe share with us what you find work in your experience, and then just amplify our voice and support us in a way that you can. And
yeah, thank you for the question. This was the struggle I originally had as well, because I used to live in the UK. I had a lot of training as an activist myself, and I really wanted to bring that back to Japan, where I'm like originally from, but it just didn't work because of cultural differences. So that's what we try to do at AAA. We have trainings for activists, but in local languages, done by local leadership as well. So that's what we're trying to do. What else was I gonna say? Wait, 1 second. Training. Sorry, it'll come back to me.
Okay.
If it does, I'll get back to you.
Okay.
any other question? I'm not sure how much time do we have left.
We have time for literally 30 seconds. So if you, 30 seconds, then we'll get a quick response.
Thank you for your conference. I'm trying to be quick. I was wondering whether you had some insights about how the Buddhist tradition in many Asian countries affect how people see the modern-day animal rights movement in Asia.
What was the question?
Sorry, I was can repeat. I was wondering whether you had some insights about the way the Buddhist tradition in many Asian countries may have an impact on how people in Asia look at the animal rights movement.
Regarding animal rights movement, and okay.
Buddhism, right? Buddhism impact. Yeah, it is another really complicated area, because while some people might think that Buddhism would help people's behavior and attitude towards animals, sometimes if people believe in, for example, reincarnation, and people are like animals in this lifetime might have done something bad in the previous life as a human being, so therefore they deserve some bad treatment. So it's very, very complex. It's not very straightforward, where compassion is the answer to everything. So there's a lot of, working with these communities as well. But thanks to these communities, there are lots more plant-based food eateries to begin with. But talking about animal rights and justice with these communities is another area that we need to learn more about. So yeah, it's a lot more complex, and there are lots of layers as well.
Thank you, Ellie. And I'd just like to add the example from Thailand as well, because Thailand is, I think the majority of us are Buddhist, but there are also both sides that Buddhism can be used as a narrative to support people being more compassionate to the animals. And we also have like one of the biggest plant-based festival related to Chinese Buddhist culture as well. But on the other side, we also have other practices that are very, very harmful to animals. Like, for example, you can go to temple and you could buy birds that being caged, being captured in the wild to release, and people think that you, by purchasing the birds and releasing the birds or fish or whatever, you gain merits or good deeds. And that's also more complex. I think Buddhism also very different and manifests in different ways in different communities as well. Yeah. Did it come back to you, the answer from, no, okay.
Okay, I think that's all we have time for, so should we give another round of applause? Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.